I know you're gonna dig this.
Peace, everybody. WillFocus here. And I know normally when I come to you guys, I am on a session doing some kind of shoot, doing a walkthrough. You're seeing how I set up lights, etc., work with a client. But today we're doing something a little bit different. And I know you're wondering what that might be. I was approached by Dehancer. And if you do not know who Dehancer is, they are a plugin company. Now, if you know me, the word plugin is really going to set me off. I'm one of those people who feels like you should have full control over your images and customize things the way that you want. So usually when I hear plugin, that means something that you go in, you click a button, it does some stuff for you that seems magical, and then boom, you're done without you having too much control over it. However, when Dehancer approached me, they just asked me to take a look at it, do a review, see how I feel about it, and to be honest, because the honesty is going to help them improve the actual platform that they're building. So, with that being said, I was able to get a look into what Dehancer does, and I'm going to take you along with me as I review the plugin. All right, so hopefully you will enjoy this. We're going to go and we're going to do some things really quickly just to give you a rundown of how it works and functions, but not all the intricacies of each option that you get. And keep in mind, I said options, so that should tell you it's a little bit different than you would normally expect. Now, normally, this plugin is not a standalone plugin. So you have to make sure that you have the application that works for it. So we have DaVinci Resolve as an application, Lightroom, Capture One, and Photoshop. And if you're using any of these, when you go in those programs, they will have an option that will launch the plugin interface outside of the program. But you do require those programs in order for this to function properly. But I'll show you that in the video, so let's get started. Now, I know that's a little bit different than normal, but bear with me. This might be of some use to you. So, Dehancer reached out to me and requested that I review their plugin. Now, if you're not familiar with Dehancer, what they actually do is they create a plugin that is a film replication plugin. Essentially, what it does is it takes the images that you have and allows you to replicate film by using various presets and various settings within the program. It's kind of interesting. Now, if you also know me, you know I am not a fan of plugins because most of the time plugins aren't very customizable. They're very one-stop shop. You hit a button, boom, it does something, that's it. So I was a little skeptical when they approached me. However, they did tell me that they wanted me to give my honest opinion. They were not looking for me to give some positive review just because. They wanted me to actually tell the truth because it would help them evaluate things that they may or may not need to change within the plugin program. So this applies for DaVinci Resolve, Capture One, Lightroom, and Photoshop. But today I'll be reviewing, as you see, Lightroom. So when you install the plugin, it's very straightforward. Nothing out of the ordinary when you do this. Now, what you will note is it will only operate within the program that it is associated with. So if you got it for Photoshop, Lightroom, or Capture One, you have to use it within that program to get it to open up. It's not a standalone program by itself. It requires the other program in order to utilize its features. So, for example, in Lightroom, in the Library tab, I'm going to take an image that I've already worked on, and I'm going to utilize Dehancer to further enhance this photo. Now, what you would do is you would right-click on the photo. You're going to notice after you install, if you go to Edit In, you will have an option that says Dehancer Lightroom.exe. All right, and if you click that, you're going to be presented with a dialog box that's going to pop up. Now, if you're working directly from your raw file, you're going to have a different pop-up box than if you're working from a duplicated file that may not be raw. It might be a TIFF, JPEG, etc. So when you're working from a raw file and the actual pop-up comes up, it'll say edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Now I go in, I make my adjustments already, and then I click this button. It will open the Dehancer plugin interface. Now, the other thing is these two options here, edit a copy and edit original, will not be selected if you're working from your raw file. Once you've made a copy, if you do the same thing with the copy, these other options will actually come up. You'll have edit a copy and edit original. But I'm gonna go with edit a copy with Lightroom adjustments. Once I click edit, it's gonna open up the actual Lightroom Dehancer plugin interface. Now, when this interface opens up, you'll notice you'll have a main window with your image in it. Underneath, it'll have a histogram. And if you know photography, you know that's your black, shadows, midtones, highlights, and whites. And on the left-hand side, you'll have some preset options for simulated film. And on the right side, you will actually have a bunch of panels that will allow you to toggle them on and off and change some of the settings in them. So real quick, we're just going to slide through some of the ones on the left and take a look at them. As you slide down, you'll notice that each one has a name. And depending upon what you select, it will already have basically like a foundation for what you want to utilize in your photo. So we have Cinestill 50D, Cinestill 800T. They all have a different look to them. So on and so forth, down to Fuji, Kodak, etc. Right? So think of it as different types of film, different types of final results, and you would use that to build your final image on. So now, let's say I scroll through this and I want to let's do Cinestill 50D. Here we go. So as you see, my main image has changed. Now I have the settings from the Cinestill 50D as my starting point. I can then go in and I can change how I want these things to look by changing the items on the right hand side. Now, what I will tell you is that if there's something that you want to undo in this, you have to come up to the menu bar and click the actual undo button. It is a physical task, and meaning you have to move your mouse up there and click it, because Control or Command Z is not an option within this, at least not as of yet. That's a big thing for me because I work very fast. I might need to Control or Command Z to undo really quickly, and then maybe go back if I have to Control Alt Z or Control Y, Command Alt Z, Command Y. It might be an option on a Mac. And this is something that I hope that they change feature-wise in the future, so that way it makes it simpler for us, because we're all about getting things done very, very quickly. So over here in the source, we have exposure compensation, temperature comp, tint comp, and these are things that you're familiar with. If you're working in any editing program, you'll have your white balance, which has the temperature and the tint, and then you'll have your exposure compensation, which if you're on a camera is either going to give you stops underexposed or stops overexposed. It's the same thing. So we'll just, for the sake of argument, play with these to show you. You can bump it up, bump it down. You can double click to reset to the midpoint. We have the temperatures, right? So we can go towards more cool or more warm. We have the tint where we have more red or more green in our image. But as it stands, I'm going to double click to reset that. I might want a little bit of a red tint, more magenta. So let's just add a little bit of magenta to the image. And then for temperature, I'm actually going to go to the right, because I do want it a little bit more orange, because that goes to the yellow as opposed to the blue side. And then we'll leave that as it is, right? So these are our typical things. We'll close up source. So one of the things that I'm always looking for whenever I'm thinking about anything that's going to simulate film is film grain. So I'm going to check this. And while we're here, let's just look at what we have. We have source, film developer, film compression, expand print, color head, film grain, halation, bloom, and vignette. A lot of these we may be familiar with. Your vignette is obviously a white or a black, which will go around the edges of your image and present a darker or lighter area to give a more focused effect on the center of the image. Your bloom is mainly like a glow. Same thing, which is kind of similar with halation. They're very similar in terms of how they apply to glowing effects or the brightness of your whites and how they spill out of certain objects in your photo. But right now, we want to jump into film grade. And I'm not going to go through every individual one because we would be here forever. I might make a couple of other videos explaining what some of them do so that way you can get familiar with it. But for now, we'll touch on maybe film grain, bloom, and vignette. So, film grain. As it stands, I don't like a ton of grain in my images. So I'm very, very specific about how I have them look when I'm setting them up. I don't want it to be overdone. A lot of people may overdo these, and that is not something that I want to do. So I'm just going to show you. If I increase the size of the grain, you'll notice a significant difference in the picture. I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit so you can see how this actually changes. So right now we're at 6.36. I'm going to go back down to 1.5, right? And you can see there's a significant difference. And if I increase the amount, there's also a large difference, but I do not like that effect at all. Now it may be for some people, just not for me. So I'm going to bump that down to, let's say, 15, and we'll leave it there. The resolution does the same thing. It will increase the resolution available for more grain. Shadows, midtones, and highlights will actually, and I said midtones, but shadows, midtones, and highlights will actually allow you to change the look within those respective areas, which I think is really, really good because that's a concentration that you don't get in any app for that matter. It allows you to say, hey, I want more or less in this particular area of my image. Now, let's reduce it in the shadows. And you're probably not going to notice it that much, but if we zoom in a little bit, you'll notice that areas like this, or areas like this, is what it's actually controlling. So let's look. There we go. Notice how you don't really see it in the highlights. However, let's say we go to the highlights. Now you'll start to see the effect change more drastically because we're actually changing that on the highlights. I'm going to go back, click, undo these. There we go. As it stands, I kind of like this. I like how it looks. I don't really want to change anything in regards to this. So I'm going to leave the film grain where it is. Now, I spoke of vignette, so I'm going to activate that. So as it stands, and you can click this one-to-one arrow or the expansion arrow, which will either bring it to a 1-to-1 ratio where you can see it at the size and resolution it actually is, or hit the fill, and that will actually bring it to fit the screen. So we have the exposure, which by default, if it's in the middle, let's go here, then you have nothing, no vignette. But if you go to the right, your vignette turns to the whiter vignette on the outside, one that is actually increasing the exposure. But if you lower it, it's giving you shadow and shade, right? And then you can change the size of it. If you want it more focused, you could lower it. If you want it greater, you could raise it. Let's lower it just a little bit. And then you can actually change the amount of feather, which is going to affect the softness and the speed of the transition from dark to transparency in the actual vignette. And your aspect ratio, you can change from horizontal to vertical. But these are the options in terms of vignetting. Now, I believe when you start, the feather is turned all the way up, not something I would ever recommend. So you won't notice the effect as much if it's all the way up, but sometimes that noticeable effect is a good thing. It adds to the essence of the actual photograph. So as it stands, let's bump the exposure up just a little bit so it's not as dark on the edges. And then we are going to collapse this. Let's open balloon. Let's activate it. And one of the things you'll notice is in some of these planes it has a mask mode. If you click the mask mode, it will show you the areas of the image that are being affected by whatever you're setting for, right? So right now it says impact, which I believe is more of the intensity. So if I lower this, you'll notice that a significant amount of what we saw went away, right? So I'm gonna take mask mode off. Let's look at the image. So impact is at 25. Let's jump that up to 100, and you'll notice that it starts to get a very, very nice bloom effect around the transitional areas between the shadows and like midtones. But you can change the highlight, source limiter, the details in the bloom, the level of diffusion. So if you want it to be a softer, like spread, you would go higher in your diffusion. If you want it to be a harder, more precise spread, you would lower it. I like the softer spread because in images that are supposed to represent and mimic film, typically the instant vibe and thought process I get are softer images that give an older look, a vintage look. And so I would go for something that has a much greater level of diffusion. And then obviously you have your amplify, save lights, your saturation, which is going to be the colors. So these are some of the options that you have. We'll close that up. Let's open print up, right? Let's click that. Now, this is your paper type. So we have Fujifilm print film paper, we have Kodak print film, Cineon film log, and linear. So let's start with linear. Let's see what it did. It seems to have just added way more exposure to the actual image itself. Cineon definitely desaturates and takes away a lot of the contrast. I'm not sure how I would feel about that, but obviously we have settings here. I'm sure we can, change these. Again, these are foundations and starting points. This is the Fujifilm, the first Kodak here, and glossy paper that we have. I do feel like the glossy paper is my favorite, and we can change the exposure a little bit or raise it up, and we can change our tonal contrast. I'm gonna lower it because I don't want to boost it up too much. I like the softer look, but not by too much. And then color density, let's see what we get. We can bump up the color density, which would add to it if we feel like things have been softened a bit much. But I'm just gonna add a little bit of color to it. And then obviously saturation, 0 to 100. If we go back to 0, we are gonna get a black and white image, obviously. So we're gonna bump this up, let's say to like 90. And I know that's not exactly 90, but there we go. And what we get there. That I kind of like. Oddly enough, let's go to 100. I actually like it at 100 because this keeps it very, very sleek. And let's jump in here. Yeah, see, color tones are really nice. There's no weird gradation. It still gives a soft look while maintaining a certain level of sharpness, which you can look in the nostril area and at the shapes of the flowers that are in the foreground. I have to say, I am very impressed because each one of these has a significant number of options underneath them. So if you combine these options that you can change, let's look at film compression, right? Let's lower the impact and change the tonal range. Ooh, I don't want to go that far. I want to go back. Let's go back. And let's change our white point. Lower it. There we go. Now let's increase our impact. All right. There are so many options within here that allow you to choose and play around with different settings. And then if you're not happy, you can always, change the type of film. I can click this CineStill. I can always go back. And the benefit of it is all of my options that I've already preset are going to stay the same. So it's just changing the underlying foundation whenever I pick something new. So I could say, I was great where I started at the ADOS. And then I could say, you know what? I want to change it back to the 50D. I go here now where our second starting point was. But then I can build upon that. I can say this Kodak Kodachrome 64 is a little bit better for me, which it isn't for me personally, but just speaking, I like the settings that you have. I like the options that they give you. Like I scrolled for a while, so there's got to be like 50 different options, but it's really, really nice because it means with each option and these actual panels that are on the side, let's see how many we have. Ignoring the source panel, let's just say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 panels with about 50 of these, you're going to get a significant ability to change the variations and looks of your image within this. So there's way more customization than your normal plugin. And it does seem a little more robust and a little heftier. I do like how this shows you a histogram, which if you're still trying to make sure certain things are balanced or within respective limitations, that is always great to be able to look at. So for now, we're going to stop this. I'm just going to, cut it here. I feel like we were able to get a good idea of what the actual program itself does. I'm going to jump back to 50D. I like this. But for now, this is where we are. And I want to thank you guys for joining me. And I hope you like it, comment, and subscribe. And if you have an opportunity, check out Dehancer. I do have a custom code for you guys that I will be leaving in the description. For everybody who stayed tuned and was looking to get some information, I do have that for you. So check out the description, check out the information. I will have a custom code if you want to be able to buy this and test it out on your own. I would recommend it. So check it out if you want to. It's actually pleasantly surprising to me, and I like what it's been able to do with my photos. All in all, I have to say I'm kind of impressed. Outside of the undo and redo features, not really having a shortcut, and again, I could be overlooking something, I really like how robust the actual plugin is. For something that's relatively small in size, it gives you a lot of control and flexibility that I don't normally see with any other plugin. So as far as me giving it a rating, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10, but this is just me getting familiar with it. I do like how it functions. I love what it provides in terms of flexibility in your image. I love the customizations that you're able to do. So it does have a lot of flexibility, which was something that I was complaining about with most other plugins. So good job to Dehancer. Please get the undo and redo as an option with keyboard shortcuts, and I think we'll be good to go. Other than that, I think that's about it. So you guys already know what to do. Like, comment, follow, and subscribe. The One Will Focus, TheOneWillFocus.com, and ThePhotoTakeover.com on everything. Hope you guys enjoyed. Speak to you soon. Peace.